Sube allá donde porque Jerónimo, un familiar que era de enfermedad del sur, de Punto del Sur. Parece hay pollo ahí.
Best friends are supposed to have your back, but what happens when that bond turns deadly? In a chilling twist, young girls with their whole lives ahead of them were lured into gruesome rituals by the very people they trusted most. From being unknowingly fed human remains until their bodies gave out to falling victim to cannibalistic horrors, these weren't just senseless murders. They were calculated, ritualistic sacrifices fueled by obsession, dark fantasies, and unbreakable pacts. What could drive seemingly normal teenagers to commit such horrifying acts? And how did no one see the warning signs? Buckle up. These are the most disturbing true crime stories you'll ever hear.
This all began when Nicole Lovell left her Blacksburg home to go on a date with Eisenhower. Now, according to Pettit, that night went terribly wrong, ending with both Eisenhower and his friend Naryeli Keepers kidnapping Lovell and stabbing her in the woods, we now know 14 times.
On January 11th, 2020, 15-year-old Naryeli Guillen died in her mom's arms. Doctors said that her cause of death was a heart attack caused by pneumonia and malnourishment. However, the true cause of Naryeli's death was far more sick and depraved than anyone could have imagined. Eventually, the truth emerged. Naryeli had been murdered by her best friend Stephanie in a calculated ritualistic execution. The reason? A twisted act of revenge, all because Naryeli had stolen her boyfriend.
Lo que le pasaba a la niña era por cosas de brujería.
Ese video se hizo viral y pensaban que había sido en un centro espiritual, pero fue aquí en esta casa.
Fue aquí en mi casa.
El demonio puede producir un daño real en las personas, lo produce.
The story begins in La Guaira, Venezuela, in late 2019. 15-year-old Naryeli was born and raised in this city, known for its beautiful, stretching beaches and sunny weather. Up until this time, her life was filled with happiness. But on December 19th, 2019, everything changed. That day, Naryeli decided to spend a beach day with her best friend Stephanie. The sun was shining, and Naryeli was in high spirits, looking forward to soaking up the weather. When the two first met up, everything seemed normal. They chatted and caught up on each other's gossip. But then, something unusual happened. As they reached the beach and found the perfect spot to sit, Stephanie pulled out an odd-looking bracelet. She told Naryeli that she had made it herself, calling it a friendship bracelet that would also protect her from evil. Unbeknownst to Naryeli, she and Stephanie had been dating the same boy, creating a deadly love triangle. That day, when Naryeli put on the bracelet, she had no idea she was signing her death warrant.
El fallecimiento de una menor de edad, una quinceañera, conmocionó las redes sociales. Gran parte de la ciudadanía corrió la noticia de boca en boca. Muchos eran los comentarios y fuentes policiales aseguraban que esta había fallecido en un portal espiritual de culto a María Leonza.
Just 13 days later, on Christmas Eve, Naryeli woke up excited to spend the holiday with her family. But suddenly she began feeling severely ill. All at once, it was as if her body was falling apart. She couldn't swallow. She couldn't move. With no option but to rest and hope for recovery, Naryeli spent Christmas lying in bed, suffering as her family tended to her, sick with worry. No one could figure out what was wrong. At the time, they assumed it was just a virus and that it would eventually pass, but they were wrong. By New Year's Eve, Naryeli had deteriorated even further. This was when her parents, Jose and Audrey, decided enough was enough. In a rush, they took her to the hospital. At the hospital, they faced a dire situation. Due to understaffing and overcrowding, no doctors were available to treat Naryeli. The family waited for hours, but as Naryeli slightly recovered from her fainting spell, they eventually gave up and went home, believing that maybe they had overreacted.
No nos hablaba, yo le buscaba a ella los medios, le busqué cuadernos, lápiz, la ponía que quería escribir, no quería escribir. Yo le deletreaba letras a ver y nunca nos vimos. Ella padeciera de síncope. Síncope es algo que es como oxigenación al cerebro.
After returning home, Naryeli's behavior changed drastically. Over the next 2 days, she became extremely aggressive and volatile, even lashing out at her mom. Despite her frail and thin body, she displayed abnormal strength, almost inhuman. Even more disturbingly, she stopped speaking altogether. By January 2nd, 2020, Naryeli still hadn't improved. Desperate for answers, her parents called 2 doctors to examine her at home. The doctors took blood samples and closely examined her, searching for clues, but nothing was found. Unsure of what else to do, the doctors recommended a high-calorie liquid diet. Yet even then, Naryeli couldn't keep anything down. Her father, Jose, was consumed with worry. Looking at his daughter, It was as if she were no longer human. Desperate, he turned to the church for help. Jose recorded a video of Naryeli to show the priest the extent of her suffering. In the footage, Naryeli sat on the bed, hauntingly thin, with barely any hair left on her head. She was shaking, her face contorted, her jaw gnashing, yet she made no sound. After watching the video, the priest immediately recognized that this was no ordinary illness. He told Jose that he believed Naryeli was a victim of witchcraft and urged the family to seek spiritual cleansing immediately. Following this advice, Naryeli's family took her to a nearby spiritual center. Over the next 11 days, from January 1st to January 11th, 2020, she underwent various spiritual treatments. One of these rituals involved midnight baths in a river believed to have healing powers. On Saturday, January 11th, 2020, Naryeli took her final breath in her mom's arms, in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by her grieving family.
Sí, en la iglesia creemos en la existencia de no solamente de Satanás como el príncipe de los demonios, sino en ángeles malos, ángeles caídos, que son seres espirituales que no tienen cuerpo y que eventualmente, como no respetan al ser humano, pueden meterse, si Dios se los permite, solo si Dios se los permite, pues en el cuerpo de una persona, pero evidentemente nunca pueden tomar posesión total de una persona. Y la iglesia tiene previsto un ritual que se llama ritual de exorcismos para expulsar a estos demonios.
But that wasn't the end of the horror. What happened next was chilling. Just after Naryeli's death, Stephanie arrived at the family's doorstep, somehow already aware, even though no one had yet shared the news. Immediately, suspicion fell on her. In the days following Naryeli's passing, Stephanie's disturbing behavior only intensified. People noticed that she had been posting eerie messages on Facebook. One post, made just days before Naryeli's death, read, "I laugh at the living, and I walk with the dead. They never fail me or lie." At Naryeli's funeral, held in a small church, tensions boiled over when Stephanie arrived. Mourners confronted her, demanding answers, screaming for a confession. They surrounded her, shouting and crying, with many recording the confrontation on their phones. The case quickly went viral across Venezuela, flooding TikTok with videos and theories about Stephanie's involvement in Naryeli's death. With all the strange clues, one thing became clear: Stephanie was to blame. The bracelet she had given Naryeli was cursed. The moment Naryeli put it on, her fate was sealed. And yet, to this day, Stephanie remains free. She has never faced consequences for what she did. She is still out there, and she could do it again.
Directamente no me la nombran a ella. Se me entiende, aunque sea mentira que no me la nombran directamente. Simplemente sospechamos, yo empiezo la sospecha por lo que ella le hizo a la niña. Ella le puso un pulso, fueron a la playa, no sé qué impacto hicieron allá en la playa, salen las dos manos cruzadas así como metiéndose algo. ¿Entiendes? Y empiezo a indagar yo que era muchacha. Sí, pero en realidad no llegué al fondo porque en realidad no tenía como abrirle el Facebook a buscar algo, por una pista, algo.
Karina Barduchian was a sweet, sensible, and gentle 16-year-old girl. Just starting her 11th grade, she was focused on her future. But when she made one reckless decision, she met a horrific fate, drowned, dismembered, and eaten in a ritualistic murder by the lead singer of a pop group.
Теперь подробности расследования убийства, информация о котором накануне повергла в шок весь Петербург. Сегодня о так называемом деле людоедов рассказали в Следственном комитете. 19 января в милицию поступил...
St. Petersburg, Russia, January 19th, 2009. Karina left home to sell advertisements near a subway station, a part-time job she used to earn extra pocket money. That evening, she called her mom, Nadia, to say she needed to complete some extra homework and would be staying over at a friend's house because their Wi-Fi wasn't working. Her mom was worried, but Karina reassured her. "Mom, do not worry. At 7 a.m. I'll be home. I have a head on my shoulders." Those would be the last words she would ever say to her mom. Unbeknownst to her family, Karina was lying. Instead of studying, she planned to visit 20-year-old Maxim Golovatskikh, the lead singer of a minor pop group in St. Petersburg, whom she had been secretly dating. 4 years younger and impressionable, Karina was starstruck and in love. That night, Karina carried out her plan and headed to Maxim's apartment, but when she arrived, she discovered a party in full swing. Hesitant, she stepped inside to find Maxim surrounded by a group of his goth friends, including 20-year-old florist Yuri Mozhnov and a lodger named Ekaterina Zinovieva. At first, everything seemed normal. Karina was nervous among the strangers, but comforted by Maxim's presence. Eventually, everyone went to bed, and Karina followed Maxim to his bedroom. What happened next was beyond horrific. Maxim led Karina to the bathroom, taking her hand gently. Once inside, Maxim locked the door. Expecting a kiss, she instead found herself being attacked. With sudden, savage force, Maxim lunged at her, ripped off her clothes, and shoved her into the already filled bathtub. Then, in a chilling move, he sneezed 3 times, his prearranged signal. Moments later, Yuri entered the bathroom. Without hesitation or remorse, he pressed Karina's head underwater until she drowned. Ekaterina Zinovieva later testified that she heard splashes and noises, but thought nothing of it. She recalled, "They had joked earlier about killing Karina, but I couldn't believe for a second they were serious." But the nightmare didn't end with her death. After drowning Karina, Maxim and Yuri dismembered her body. Then came the most grotesque part. The two decided to cook and eat Karina's body. They roasted parts of her flesh in the oven with potatoes, onions, and spices. Satisfied, the killers disposed of the remaining body parts in garbage skips around the city. Meanwhile, Karina's mom grew frantic when her daughter failed to return home at 7 a.m. as promised. After calling her friends and finding no answers, she reported Karina missing to the police. 2 weeks later, Nadia learned the horrific truth from the news. Could you imagine her devastation? Not only did she discover her daughter was dead, but that she had been murdered in one of the most grotesque ways imaginable. Fortunately, the police quickly caught Maxim and Yuri after discovering Karina's remains scattered around the city. Chillingly, when arrested, they immediately confessed. They didn't deny it. They didn't try to cover it up. Their reason? Hunger and intoxication. Not only were Maxim and Yuri unremorseful, they seemed proud of their actions. In April 2010, trial began, but within days proceedings were halted when a judge, overcome by the gruesome crime scene photos, vomited and passed out. Prosecutor Andrei Lavrenko detailed the horror, even more disturbing. Prosecutors believed the killers had consumed some of Karina's internal organs.
После чего, как установило следствие, юноши утопили девушку в ванной и, чтобы скрыть следы, там же расчленили тело. Наибольший шок даже у бывалых следователей вызвало признание подозреваемых не только в убийстве, но и в людоедстве.
The case sent shockwaves through Russia and the international community. Karina's mom, Nadia, then 45, expressed her heartbreak. "Our lives are ruined by Karina's death and the horrible way she was taken from us." The gruesome trial left everyone involved traumatized. In the end, both Yuri and Maxim were sentenced to life in prison without parole. But Karina's tragic death remains one of the most shocking and disturbing crimes in Russian history. A murder fueled by betrayal, depravity, and unthinkable brutality. The crime went viral on social media, forever haunting the community of St. Petersburg. When 13-year-old Nicole Lovell met 18-year-old David Eisenhower on a dating app, she thought she had found love. At that awkward age when crushes first start forming, she was infatuated with David. On their first date, David brutally murdered her after weeks of meticulous planning and research on how to execute the perfect crime.
Chilling details about the murder of 13-year-old Nicole Lovell. Her family filing into the courtroom Thursday wearing blue clothes and ribbons. Prosecutors allege Virginia Tech students Naryeli Keepers and David Eisenhower planned the murder of the middle school student for weeks, scouting out locations, even buying tools.
Blacksburg, Virginia, January 2016. Nicole first started texting David. As a middle schooler, she'd already faced a challenging life. She'd battled numerous health problems, including cancer and a liver transplant that required daily medication. On top of that, the scars left behind made her a target for relentless bullying at school. When she met David, a Virginia Tech engineering student, she thought she had finally found someone who liked her. Originally from Columbia, Maryland, David had been named Athlete of the Year at Wild Lake High School. His former principal, James Lamont, even described him as an excellent student, very focused, very goal-driven. To Nicole, he seemed perfect.
Police saying the 13-year-old met David Eisenhower, charged with her murder, online on social media. The former high school track star has no prior criminal record.
He just was a very pleasant young man, but very goal-driven.
On January 27th, 2016, around midnight, Nicole arranged to meet David for their first secret date. She executed her plan carefully, pushing her nightstand against her bedroom door to ensure her mom wouldn't catch her sneaking out. Then, filled with excitement and anticipation, she climbed out her window and into the night. But David had sinister intentions. In the weeks leading up to their meetup, he had been searching Google for knockout drugs, how to burn a body, and how to get rid of bodies. The exact details of what transpired that night remain a mystery. Whether David initially pretended to be the kind and charming boy Nicole thought he was, or immediately attacked her, no one knows for sure. What is certain is that within a few hours, Nicole was dead. At some point, David snapped. He stabbed Nicole 14 times before slashing her throat, leaving her to suffer a slow and agonizing death. Imagine the pain, the warm, horrific sensation of blood trickling down your body. Imagine Nicole's terror as she looked into David's eyes, pleading as he drove the knife into her over and over again.
Now, it started out with Commonwealth Attorney Mary Pettit. When she spoke to the jury about the night this all began when Nicole Lovell left her Blacksburg home to go on a date with Eisenhower. Now, according to Pettit, that night went terribly wrong, ending with both Eisenhower and his friend Natalie Keepers kidnapping Lovell and her in the woods, we now know 14 times.
Nicole's autopsy later revealed the extent of the brutality. Most of the stab wounds were to her head, with 8 concentrated in her chest. Even more horrifying, the medical examiner testified that Nicole was still alive when her neck was broken. But David didn't act alone. He had an accomplice, 19-year-old Natalie Keepers, a fellow Virginia Tech engineering student. Investigators discovered that Natalie had a fascination with knives and was deeply motivated to kill Nicole. She told detectives that David had claimed he met Nicole at a high school party and might have had sex with her, though he couldn't remember because he had blacked out.
There are new and troubling developments tonight in that murder mystery in Virginia. Police now revealing new details about the 13-year-old cancer survivor kidnapped and killed, now saying she was found to death. 2 college students are now charged, one a star high school athlete before college.
After the murder, David and Natalie transported Nicole's body, initially hiding it near Craig Creek Road in Montgomery County, before later relocating it to Surry County, North Carolina. 3 days later, on January 30th, 2016, Nicole's lifeless body was discovered, 80 miles from her home. The evidence was damning. Nicole's blood on one of Natalie's boots, a bloody gym bag in Natalie's dorm room containing Nicole's underwear, a Minions blanket, and a bloodied stick. That same day, David was arrested, and Natalie was taken into custody on January 31st. Over the course of a grueling 20-hour police interrogation, Natalie gradually confessed to helping plan the murder, clean Nicole's body, and dispose of it, shocking even the most seasoned detectives. With all the evidence collected, the case was airtight. The perpetrators were David and Natalie.
Prosecutors allege Virginia Tech students Natalie Keepers and David Eisenhower planned the murder of the middle school student for weeks, scouting out locations, even buying tools. When police showed up to talk to Keepers, she immediately tried to warn Eisenhower, texting him police. It was then she told FBI investigators that Eisenhower killed Nicole and put her body in his Lexus, reportedly saying the two drove with the body in the car to Walmart, where they bought supplies to clean up the crime, telling authorities where to locate the murder weapon and Nicole's body. Keepers allegedly saying she was, quote, excited to be a part of something secretive and special.
The trial began on February 6, 2018. David was sentenced to 50 years in prison, while Natalie still awaits her final sentencing. But regardless of the outcome, both will spend their lives rotting behind bars. In the wake of Nicole's death, her family and community were left shattered. Her mom remains haunted by the night Nicole slipped out of her window, endlessly wishing she had stopped her. Nicole was only 13. She had her whole life ahead of her, only for it to be stolen by a ruthless predator with a deadly obsession. David had planned her murder as if it were a ritual, calculated, brutal, and deeply disturbing. Her murder also exposed the dark side of dating apps. Thousands of young people use them daily, but the truth is, you never really know who you're talking to. They might seem perfect, just like David did, but underneath, something far more sinister could be lurking. Unfortunately for Nicole, she realized this far too late.
Nicole touched many people throughout her short life.
The pain of losing this smiling face is beyond words for Tammy Weeks. Police now say her daughter, Nicole Lovell, was stabbed to death after she went missing from her Blacksburg home. People who live nearby say the case stunned this normally quiet and friendly community.
That's a shame. I mean, just still, for me, it's just shocking. I never would have guessed it.
So, what are your thoughts on these horrific ritual murders? What causes a teenager to commit such heinous crimes? Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next video.